Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin. We're going to be doing an update on the bull market support band. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. Let's go ahead and jump in. So, we have yet another weekly close and another week where we are below the bull market support band. So, we again are playing in our sandbox. The 20-week SMA, for those that are curious, is now right around $53,000. Okay, the 21-week EMA is just below 51K. So the bull market support band more or less ranges from 51 to 53K. All right. Now, historically, we know that going below the 20-week SMA, when we have weekly closes below it, it can tend to take several months before we can break back above it. If you guys remember back in the summer, we broke below in the middle of May, and we didn't actually break back above it until August. Okay, so this time we broke below it in late November. So, I mean, it's been what, a little over a month so far? I don't know. I mean, it seems completely reasonable that we could still have a ways to go before we can actually break back above it. Now, some people, I know we've talked about, cycle theory and whatnot, and look, I know there's some people holding on to the hope that we'll have a parabolic Q1, but I doubt it, to be completely honest. Right? I doubt Bitcoin's going to have a parabolic Q1. I think there's a lot more chop to do. Whether that means sideways, whether it means just kind of coming through here for a while, whether it means coming down and testing this wick before. Okay, I mean that's certainly a possibility as well. But regardless, I would argue that Bitcoin is going to be somewhat range bound for a while, and I'm not. I mean, I guess I'm not getting the impression that there's any reason to assume that we're about to have a breakout mania phase. Okay, so I would say that I know there's some models that are calling for an imminent rally, but that would also sort of go against the idea of any time we break below the bull market support band, it tends to take a few months to get back above it. So I mean, hey, if we get that breakout to the upside and we can break back above 53K, then full steam ahead, right? I mean, I'm happy to go full steam ahead. But until then, the 20-week SMA is resistance, okay? And until we break it, the market is bearish. As we've been saying, until we put weekly closes above that 20-week moving average, which still is at 53K, then there's no reason to assume that Bitcoin even has a chance, really, of going parabolic in the short term. So remember, this could still be a long, drawn-out thing, all right? And I would argue that Bitcoin still has a lot of work to do in this region over here. And if you think about it, compared to the summer lull, it does look fairly similar. If we switch it over to those Heiken Ashi candles that we were talking about, you can see that it does a fairly decent job of identifying those uptrends and those downtrends that we've previously observed. And I mean, we're in a downtrend, right? I mean, that doesn't mean that every week is a weekly close below the last week, but when you look at something like the Heiken Ashi candles, which more or less they look at averages between a lot of different factors for weekly closes, then you can see that while technically they're having some weekly closes higher than others, we're still not putting in any weekly closes as they're defined above the midpoint from the prior week. Okay, and so that's why we're seeing a continued downtrend on the Heiken Ashi candles. Now, if we switch this back over to the normal candles, one of the things we also can note is that this downtrend here, I mean, there are some similarities, right? There certainly are some similarities. If we look at it on a daily time frame, and so what we're going to do is we're going to take a bar pattern. Okay, so we're going to take a bar pattern here, and we're going to look at this downtrend that we observed. Okay, and then we're going to overlay it over here. Okay, so let me do that. So we're going to overlay it. One of the things that is somewhat familiar, we had a sort of a similar pattern play out here once before, in fact, right? If I try to adjust this, shrink it some, you can see that there was some moves like this during that past lull that we had. Namely, what I'm referring to, if you're not familiar, is we had sort of like a chop down, right? So we were putting in lower highs, also putting in lower lows. And then on sort of that fourth attempt, we actually started to get close to that 21-week EMA, right? We didn't actually quite make it there, but we made a pretty good move towards it. This one over here seems like a somewhat, at least so far, it seems like a somewhat tamer version of this, right? Everything's a lot more compressed. I mean, this one all the way down to 30K, 29K, and then back up to 43K. This one is obviously a lot more compressed than that one. So you had sort of like that one, those higher or those lower highs and the lower lows, and then on that fourth attempt, we went up to the 21-week EMA, and then we still got rejected, somewhat like we got rejected over here by it, all right? But then what you'll notice is that we still had a little bit of chop to do for actually quite some time. And we came down, we capitulated after getting rejected off the 21-week EMA. We didn't actually quite make it there. But similar thing over here. And then we still had a pretty bearish phase for a few weeks before we were able to recover. So, the way I look at the market is to not constantly assume that Bitcoin's going to go parabolic. If you do that, you're sort of setting yourself up for, to be let down, right? Because if you constantly think it, more times than not, Bitcoin's not going parabolic. So it's better to just be conservative, and then eventually it goes parabolic, and then you're like, oh, well, it defied my expectations. But for now, I would argue that Bitcoin still has a ways to go in this range that we're in. And, until we break above the 20-week SMA, then there really is no reason to be overly bullish in the short term, okay? Now, I've said before, my thoughts on this market cycle, there's going to be bullish times, there's going to be bearish times. I don't really see a major market cycle mania peak for Bitcoin, not until much deeper into 2022 at the very earliest. And again, it might not be until 2023. We've shown plenty of different types of analysis before that suggest that 2023 could be the year as well. So, I do imagine Bitcoin will have some decent months, as we explore 2022. But don't be fooled into thinking that it has to immediately go up, put in a parabolic blow-off rally top, and then come crumbling back down. That's probably not what's going to happen here. I think right now, we're obviously in a downtrend, and we have not broken it yet. And until we break above the 20-week SMA, we're still playing in our sandbox, right? There's just no other way to say it. I know that's not really what people want to hear, but it just is what it is, right? We're below the bull market support band. Until we get back above it, it just, we're just sort of leaning kind of bearish, right? We're leaning kind of bearish until we're back above it. And that's how it always is when we're below it. Back over here during the summer lull, when we were below it, market was bearish. And what happened, right? What happened during that phase is that every micro pump got instantly sold off, right? Every single one, they just kept getting sold off and sold off and sold off. And then eventually we got back above our bull market support band, and then we started showing a little bit more strength, right? Then pumps or dips were bought up really quickly. Dips were bought up really quickly. Even this one was fairly quick, right? This dip got bought up. We then capitulated lower. This dip got bought up and we continued higher, and then ultimately put in a new all-time high. But then when we're below the bull market support band, you'll often see dips aren't bought up as quickly, or the moves to the upside get instantly sold off just because there are a lot of market participants who are bearish. And why shouldn't they be, right? We've been in a downtrend. You look at the weekly time frame, and it's hard to, especially with these Heiken IC candles, and you can visualize the sentiment, right? You visualize why people are feeling the way they do. It's just because this is now our 8th week of being sort of in a phase where the momentum is heading down. Okay, so my thinking on it, my honest thinking on it is that there still is quite a ways of chopping below the 20-week SMA to do, okay? And, whenever we do break above and we hold it as support, hopefully that'll kickstart the next rally, right? That's the hope anyways. That's what we saw happen before back in October of 2020. Okay, so this kickstarted this rally here after we held it as support. This one, it gave us a new all-time high, but unfortunately, that was it. It was just sort of one new all-time high, maybe a couple all-time highs, and then we're back below it. So remember that in a longer market cycle, which is sort of what the speculation is, and by the way, one market cycle can certainly have more than one bullish phase and one bearish phase. If you remember, this market cycle as defined from the bottom started over here. And so we had this bullish phase in 2019, this bearish phase after it, another bullish phase here. Everyone obviously remembers the summer lull where we came back down, another bullish phase, and now we're back in another bearish phase. Okay? So that's where we are today. Now, we've also talked about the 50-week moving average, and we should probably talk about that again because we did have a weekly close below it, right? So we had a weekly close below, then we came back above, now another weekly close below. Now, the 50-week SMA is now at 48,477. All right, so, we are now below it, and, if we pull up that other that sort of bull market support band, you can kind of see, maybe it's holding it as support. I understand that it feels somewhat moving the goalpost-esque, right? Which is why I'm not gonna, use this one as sort of the end-all be-all for the bull market support. We know that the 20-week SMA defines sentiment in the market, right? We've seen that plenty of times before, and we can see it now, right? I mean, when we're below it, pumps are getting sold off. When we're above it, people like to buy the dip a little bit more, right? When we're below it, it's just brutal. When we're above it, it's great. So I still do think the 20-week SMA and the 21-week EMA provide a great benchmark for understanding whether market sentiment is bullish or bearish. Okay, I mean, and certainly right now, you could argue that the market sentiment is bearish. I mean, go look at the crypto fear and greed index, and you can see we're at 29, and we've basically just been in fear or extreme fear for the last couple of months. So, just to sort of finish this video off, I think to summarize it would be to say this. I know there's a lot of people hoping for a parabolic rally in Q1 so they can just sell all their crypto off and, call it a day and then come back and do it later. But I would say it's actually much more likely that we continue chopping for a while, okay, below the 20-week SMA. It's much more likely that happens, and that a mania phase, a future mania phase for Bitcoin specifically, is likely deeper into 2022 or maybe even early 2023. Those are my thoughts on the matter. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to subscribe to the channel. Give the video a thumbs up. We also have the premium list into thecryptoverse.com. Thank you for tuning in. Subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.